Okay, answering the question, how to make fish stock. First, I want to make a distinction between the term fish fumet, which means the essence or the aroma of fish, and fish stock, which is a little bit more of a specific formula, which is usually equal parts dry white wine, water, vegetables, a few herbs, and a fish bones. And also want to make a very clear distinction about the length of time, in which the fish stocks are made. They're only simmered for an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. And the reason why is the fat that's in the marrow of the skeletons or in the head of the fish, if you're using heads, we're not today, we're using grouper skeletons today. The fat that's in this marrow is what causes the essence, flavor, or experience of what we call fishy, ultimately in the sauce, but initially in the fish stock itself. So overcooking in terms of the time that the fish stock is cooked is an absolute no-no. This is the only stock in cooking that has a very much more specific cutoff time. Other stocks, you can cook them another hour, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever sometimes, but not the fish stock. So the basic ingredients to the fish stock are the fish bones, and I have them soaking in water here on the table in front of me now. Now, the reason I have them soaking in water is because this takes off some of the extra fishiness and some of the blood. And now, some people would even soak these in milk, like they do so often a fillet of fish before they cook it, because the milk neutralizes the oils in the fish and takes away any fishiness. But let's keep in mind that generally speaking, fishiness is only a consequence that's created by older fish, unless you happen to be a very oily fish like mackerel or snook or something like this. So let's keep that in mind. Now, the grouper bones, I left whole because I want to show you how to cut them up, are, we got about 3 or 4 pounds here. And what we're going to do is, because there's a short length of time in cooking the stock, we're going to begin this stock by putting all the vegetables underneath the bones so they get cooked in the water and not float on the top and don't access as much water as they would otherwise. So we're going to start by putting 1½ medium-sized onions inside the pot, and we're going to use this small domestic-sized stock pot to make the fish stock. Now, whenever you're going to cook a stock that short period of time, like we are with the fish stock, it's only an hour and 15 minutes, the vegetables themselves need to be cut up small, because you don't want to take an excess amount of time for them to become stock logged, if you will. You want to extract the flavor of the vegetables right away. So the smaller you cut them up, kind of the better in this particular case. So we'll put the onions on the bottom, and we'll cut up our celery ribs. Now, some people would say, well, you could even put this in a food processor briefly and chop it really fine. But I happen to be fairly proficient at this, so I'm just going to knock it out by hand rather than dirty the food processor. Okay, I'll put the celery in there. Remember, the speed of using the knife isn't as important as that you cut it the right size. And we're going to peel a couple of carrots here. Our ingredient list calls for large carrots. These aren't really large carrots. These are your average domestic-sized carrots that you find in the supermarket. And throughout the course, I will, of course, always be targeting supermarket-style foods and things in terms of the availability, so that you will always be able to duplicate what we're making. Normally, carrots that you buy wholesale are 2, 3, 4 times the size of these carrots. Okay. So I'm using 2 carrots instead of 1 carrot, like the recipe calls for 1 large carrot. Okay, let's get the carrot cut up. Now the mushroom, we are going to throw in a food processor. That'll be a little bit faster, because I want to chop them up. Incidentally, one of the great things about fish stock, which sets it apart from just about any other stock I can think of, is that the bones are free. It's the only stock that we make in cooking where the bones are free. You can go to your fishmonger or your fish market and say, can I have some skeletons? The only thing you have to be careful about is to make sure that you don't get bones from fatty fish, because fatty fish, like snook or mackerel, or to be the best two examples I can think of, will create a fishy smelling stock. Some people don't like that. And then on the other hand, some people do. It depends what country you're from sometimes. The Japanese tend to like that a little bit more. All right, so there's your vegetable. I'm going to cut a piece of garlic in half and throw that in there. I'm going to throw a little piece of lemon in there. It says a few drops of lemon juice. We're just going to take the wedge and the rind and put it right in there. And we got a few bay leaves. We're going to throw a few bay leaves in there. And we got some parsley roots on the recipe. We're going to cut them right off a freshly washed bunch of parsley. And we're going to chop the roots up a little bit. Throw them in there. See, the weight of the bones will weight the vegetables down, and that'll keep the vegetables submerged a little bit more. It'll be easier to extract the flavor from the veg in such a short cooking time. All right. And let's put the mushrooms here real quick in the food processor. Give them a quick chop there. Okay, that's a done deal there, see? Well, all you got to do is get it off the bowl. There you go. Now, boom. Let's throw the vat mushroom in there. That might be a little more than a quarter pound, which is what the ingredients list calls for, but, you know, if you like a little more mushroom, you put it in. Okay, let me just wipe this off here for a second. All right, you see what we got in this pot now? Bunch of veg. The only thing I'm missing in here is a little bit of the leaf thyme. Let me sprinkle a little of the thyme in. Okay. And we'll put a little bit of fresh ground pepper in here. You can also throw some whole peppercorns in, but because this is going to be cooked in a short period of time, once again, it's all about extracting the flavor in that short period of time. Now, the bones themselves, I left whole because I'll show you what it looks like when we're chopping them up. Cut them up kind of small. Let me get that out of the way. Now, normally, whenever you're hitting something with a meat cleaver, I have a kind of like a standard recommendation on how you position your hands when you're doing it to prevent, you know, from cutting one of them off or part of your finger, God forbid. So pay attention to this. You'll notice how I got the grouper there. I put it in a position I want. Now, I don't hold it with my hand and hit the thing. I put it where I want. I pull this hand away. Then I hit it. You see? That way my hand is never down here in case this thing bumps and ricochets into my hand. Get some serious injury there. Last one right here. The ingredient list, of course, tells you to use a white-fleshed fish, which is what grouper is. All right, there we go. There's our bones, our mirepoix, the celery, carrots, and onions, thyme, bay leaf, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of lemon, and this is ready to go. So I'm going to put it on the stove, and I'm going to pour cold water, like 50-50. So when I say 50-50, water and wine, Richard, can you hand me the wine, please? When I say 50-50 on the water and wine, thank you. It's at an average, you know. You might want to go 2/3 water, 1/3 wine. Ultimately, in the final analysis of your cooking and planning and making these kinds of decisions, you would make that decision based on where this fish stock is going to be used. If you're going to make a velouté sauce, for example, which we're going to do out of this fish stock in this class, and you may be using white wine in a reduction to make that sauce, you may not need as much white wine in the fish stock, if any. You may just want to go all water sometimes, you know. But generally speaking, for multiple uses that are more or less generic, if you will, in nature in terms of the history of using this kind of stock, it's half white wine, half water, dry white wine. So, I'm going to cut that back just a little bit now. Top it off with some water. And the important thing now is to make sure that all of the food is covered with the water. Now I'm going to bring this up to a simmer. We're never really going to boil this. We're going to do this at a low to medium simmer throughout the entire time. And once again, just like we make every time we make a sauce or a stock, we always have some container near us. In this particular case, I got this one here, and it's got water in it. This is what we call our little scum pot. So all of the insoluble ingredients that are going to come to the top of the fish stock, we're going to remove them with the ladle, put them back in here. Now the reason we've used this with water in it, so that we can rinse the ladle off every time we do this and not bring any of the scum and put it back into the pot by accident. So all of the scum containers, if you will, should have a little bit of water in them. And they should always be kind of sitting around your stove when you're making a sauce or a soup or a stock. So you have some place to put the skimming and the insoluble articles. So we're going to let this cook and come up to a simmer, and we're going to come back briefly when it starts simmering. We'll show you a little bit of the skimming on this particular one. So we'll probably have 3 takes on this particular stock today. This stage, and then a little bit of skimming and showing you the level at which it should be simmering. And then when we strain it and remove it, and then we'll take a look at it for its clarity and things like that in the 3rd take on making fish stock. We'll be back when this comes up to a simmer in a second. Okay, now the fish stock right here, which has been simmering for about half an hour now. I'm just taking you over here. I told you this was a 3-take shot on this stock. I want you to see the level at which it's simmering. Okay, and I want you to see the scum that's on it. Not a lot of scum came up on this one. Part of the reason why is they didn't have any heads in there, only skeleton and carcasses, you see. But it's cooking along really well. Let me see how it smells. It smells good. It smells nice. So that's it. I'm just mixing her around a little bit, and we'll be back in, I don't know, a little while, about half an hour. I'll bring you back in here on another take, and we'll strain this, and then we're going to proceed, of course, into making fish velouté sauce after this. It's another lesson within this class. All right, we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, in completion of the fish stock, which I have here, and that which has been cooking for about an hour and 10 minutes. Take a close look at that. It looks a little bit beat up from being cooked, and that's good. From this stock, in this particular class, I'm going to bring you to another lesson. So the fish stock itself is basically finished. I'm going to strain it through a fine screen here. And there is your finished fish stock by itself. Looks good. And you can see how fairly clear it is. It's fairly clear. You could, of course, strain this through a cheesecloth if you want it even cleaner, but we don't need to do that today. So, let me clean up my mess I made here real quick. Inevitably, as a cook, you're stuck with spilling things. That's never going to change, no matter how good you get at this. You get better at it, but not that good. All right. This stock, of course, which is in a completely finished state right now, with the exception of it hasn't been seasoned, because we have no intention to use it for anything special. This is what many fish soup recipes call for. This is what whole braised fish, for example, might call for. You may braise the fish in this, and so on. And there'll be multiple uses for fish stock that you are either already are aware of, or I will make you aware throughout this course. Now, so anyway, there's your fish stock recipe, and enjoy that. And I'm going to move on into another lesson in this particular class, which is how to make fish velouté sauce from this.